Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be on this December the 9th, 2021. And I have a little bit of an update on a case that we've been talking about. We now have a verdict in the Jussie Smollett trial, guilty verdict. I don't think a lot of us are really that surprised. Jussie Smollett has been found guilty of staging a hoax hate crime. Jussie is facing 3 years in prison. He was found guilty on five of the six felony charges that were leveraged or charged against him. Now, Jussie Smollett testified. He actually testified in this trial. He was put on the stand by his attorneys, by his lawyers. And a lot of people are saying that that was a huge miscalculation. Now, before we get into kind of looking at some of this verdict aftermath, so the Chicago jury found Jussie Smollett guilty of 5 counts of disorderly conduct for making false reports to police that he was a victim of a hate crime in January 2019. Disorderly conduct charge for a false crime report is a class 4 felony in the state of Illinois and punishable by up to 3 years in prison and a $25,000 fine. Excuse me. The judge could give Jussie Smollett probation. Jussie Smollett, the actor or former actor in the very popular show Empire. But the really interesting thing here is there's some very well-regarded legal analysts, okay, that have put a little bit of commentary on this and have said that Jesse exposed himself to possible jail time when he actually testified in court. Quote, when you testify in a case, the judge now gets a sense of what you said. What Jussie Smollett said was resoundingly rejected by that jury. The jury did not buy what he was selling. That's not lost upon a judge. He came into the courtroom and lied. Lauren Coates, former federal prosecutor, said that Smollett's testimony was a miscalculation by the defense team. Quote, him taking the stand led to his exposure in the way, or led to his exposure, okay? A judge is now looking at you, taking everything you had to say, and is assessing that. The 12-person jury deliberated for more than 9 hours. The case was handed to the jury yesterday, and they delivered their verdict today. He was actually charged with 6 counts of disorderly conduct on suspicious of making false reports to police, found guilty on 5. Let's take a look at this because let me see if I can get this sound right here. I don't think I even have sound. There we go. Hey, Gloria. Hey, Third Eye. We are looking at the aftermath of the Jussie Smollett guilty verdict. He faces, like I said, a possible 3 years in prison. I think there's a big possibility he could go to prison. Kind of, I think it's a real ugly thing to have a mother, grandmother, aunt, whatever the case may be, going through all this. It's just too much. It's too much. It's not a good look at all. He has paraded his family around this entire trial. I'm glad he has the type of support that he does, but the truth is, only his family believes him. Okay. Now, news reporters were bombarding this group. At one point, he could barely move through the crowd. I don't know, guys. For some reason, I just get the feeling he seems to think that having an older woman on his arm is going to do something. I don't know. Okay. There it goes. Sorry about that. That was kind of weird. Honestly, I really hope that Jesse will take this learning lesson and use it as an opportunity to further um, impact people's lives in the future going forward. But guys, the truth is, I think there's a big possibility that Jussie Smollett may do some time behind this. And what's really going to get him, I think, in regards to whether or not the judge may sentence him to actual time to be spent in prison, is going to be again because he was put on the stand. He testified in his own defense. And again, when you testify in your own defense, which you don't have to do, you do not have to do that as a defendant in trial. But if you do, let me just put it like this: courts, judges, prosecutors, they don't like it when you waste their time. So the truth is, if they offer you a plea bargain before a trial and you know damn well you're guilty, you should take that plea or definitely try to negotiate some sort of plea bargain, because if you take that case to trial and you know that you're guilty of that crime, you will do more time than you would have did in any plea bargain they may have offered you before that trial started. They do not like people to waste their time. Hold on here. Now, he was found guilty, you guys, of staging this hate crime, lying to police, um, race baiting. It's so horrible because when this happened, it was during a climate here in America of a huge climate of racism, police brutality, And it's like he leveraged that and MAGA to create this hoax. It's horrible. It's horrible. And there are cases that didn't get the proper attention that they needed. Um, it's awful. It's the balls for me, you know. It's the knowing that you staged this, yet look at this show he's keeps putting on, you know? I wish he would just go handle his business and mm. Again, remember this video, like eh, if you've been attacked in any way and somebody, puts a noose around your neck, who's going to sit around with that noose still around their neck an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later? Okay? It's ludicrous. Jussie really should be ashamed of himself. And I hope he will man up and go do his time and come on out, whatever time that is, whether it's probation, prison, whatever. He's facing up to 3 years in prison. This is a class 4 felony, $25,000 fine. There's nothing better than hitting people in the pockets. Okay? Hitting people in their pockets. I expect there to be quite a large fine. A lot of people feel that Jesse exploited the tense race relations for his own gain. The Osundera's brothers were paid $3,500 to stage this attack so he could get attention. Now, 3 years after he claimed, now remember his claim was two Trump loving bigots beat him up, tied a noose around his neck, and doused him in bleach in a misbegotten bid to raise his public profile. 12 jurors 12 jurors found the disgraced actor guilty of 5 of the 6 counts of felony disorderly conduct for filing a false police report. Eh, Following the testimony from 13 witnesses in more than 9 hours of deliberation. As the jurors read the verdict, Smollett, aged 39, yeah, you heard me, he's 39, stood huddled with his attorneys and kept his eyes trained on the panelists, remaining stoic as a Fallon of family members who watched the 8-day trial from the front row of the gallery sat frozen. The actor, who took more than an hour to return to the courthouse to hear the jury's verdict, was later seen embracing his siblings, some of whom didn't stand for the jury, before the panelists left the courtroom. The guilty verdict is the final chapter in this made for TV saga that jurors found Smollett not just starred in, but directed from start to finish when he asked two men to fake beat him up, gave them a script of homophobic and racist slurs to deliver, and selected a stage for the phony beatdown that he thought was in direct view of surveillance cameras. In the absence of smoking gun evidence, the trial in Chicago criminal court came down to whose story was more believable, Smollett's or the Assange. Osendero brothers. The defense vehemently maintained Smollett was the victim of a real hate crime and called the brothers sophisticated liars and criminals who later offered to recant their story and tell the truth in exchange for $2 million. Quote, he's dumb enough to go into Obama's city and pretend there's Trump supporters running around with MAGA hats. Give me a break. End quote. This was the defense attorney. This is what he told the jurors in his closing arguments. Quote, the brothers were like wolves disguised as sheeps in the hen house. End quote. Prosecutors have said Smollett exploited tense race relations for his own gain and paid the brothers $3,500 to stage this attack so he could get attention. It's clearly a violation of the law to go to the police and report to police a fake crime and tell police it's a real crime. There was a special prosecutor that was convened in this case, and that prosecutor said, quote, to outright denigrate something as serious, as heinous as a real hate crime, to denigrate it, then make sure it involved words and symbols that have such horrible historical significance in our country was just plain wrong to do it, and he did. You remember Emmett Till, right? You remember Emmett Till, the young teenager who was absolutely murdered, okay? Murdered. His mother was so overcome with grief that she insisted an open casket funeral because she wanted the world to see what they did to her son. And amazingly, yesterday, or no, 2 days ago, Tuesday, the Justice Department closed the Emmett Till investigation. They closed the Emmett Till investigation. Although many of us, we all know what happened. We've all heard it in the history books. Even the woman who was the subject of this supposed whistling or whatever that happened, even later said that she lied on Emmett Till. Okay. That woman was never brought to justice. She never spent a day in prison for her actions. She never spent a single day in prison. It's crazy because you see a horrible, horrible incident like the Emmett Till murder happen in the many, many years where people want justice. And then you see this. It's not cool. It's horrible to do something like that. It's think about this for a second, you guys. If you know, my mother's or my father's mother and father and their mother and father and their mother and father have dealt with racism and hate, okay, against the black community. That's what they grew up in and they knew, right? They were always told, "Oh, it's going to get better. Oh, it's going to get better." And then they gave birth to children. And then they told their children, "It's going to get better. It's going to get better." Then their children gave birth to children and then they said, "It's going to get better. It's going to get better." And then they gave birth to children and we're all still in the same motherfucking spot. Ain't shit better. There's still a whole shitload of racism going on. Look what happened in the Rittenhouse case. The judge up there, weirdo, okay? Absolute weirdo judge doing weird shit. Look at the trial of Ahmaud Arbery that just ended on Thanksgiving Day when those three men were found guilty. This man was jogging and they murdered him. They murdered him. And even had the fucking balls to go into court in front of the judge, and the defense attorneys tried to use a racist argument in order to get their clients acquitted of murder. They stepped out front, right in front of the world, in front, right in front of this judge, and argued their racist moot point with no shame, with no shame. This is why I really hope that Jesse will be held accountable for this. This is a very unfortunate thing, but I know we all make mistakes. I know that. But when you look at all the incidents of racist attacks that has happened in America, what about the incidents that you don't even know about? What about the incidents that you never heard of? East Texas has a racist history. All across the South, there's a level of racist history that, here it is, 2021. And you literally had a lawyer who walked into court and tried to argue a racist argument in 2021. Racists who thought they would leverage the relationship they had with an individual in the attorney's office, the Georgia Attorney General's office. They figured, I'll try to leverage my relationship with this individual. That attorney has lost her job and has also been charged with a crime as well. Those three men have been sent to prison, but they did. Their attorneys tried to argue a racist argument, and it did not fly. And what's so cold about it is those defendants would have to have given their attorney the okay on the particular argument that they wanted to leverage and argue before the judge. The Justice Department closed its investigation into the infamous killing of Emmett Till without federal charges for a second time, leaving only more questions after a potential significant claim from one of the last living witnesses led investigators on a fresh hunt for evidence in 2017. Okay, 2017. Professor Timothy Tyson unearthed what appeared to be a key piece of evidence in one of the most haunting and grisly murders documented in the Jim Crow era. A recantation from the woman at the center of the case who had accused Till of making sexual advances at her over 60 years ago. 60 years ago. Yet, after an exhaustive investigation, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division has now concluded it cannot prove the woman lied to federal investigators about her story. This lie that this woman told got this teenager, he wasn't even a full man yet. He was murdered. Now, after CNN, the news organization CNN had reported the development in the case, the department subsequently, and we're talking about the Justice Department, publicized a memo explaining the evidence investigators reviewed and its reason for closing the matter without federal charges. 14-year-old Emmett Till, a black teen from Chicago, was visiting family in Mississippi in 1955. The scene of his fateful encounter with then 20-year-old Carolyn Bryant Donham, whose identity remained a mystery for the longest of time. Now, you all know that we don't, we typically don't like to look at these awful photos of um, dead people, people in their casket, that sort of thing. But his mother wanted the world His mother wanted the world to see it. Witnesses alleged that Till whistled at Donham as she left a supermarket that she ran with her husband. Carolyn Bryant Donham later testified in 1955 that Emmett Till grabbed her hand, her waist, and propositioned her, saying that he had been with white women before. Yet, when that trial testimony was raised with her years later in a 2008 interview, she said that part's not true. This explosive reported confession set off a firestorm of calls for authorities to reopen the Emmett Till cold case. The Justice Department had already re examined the case once and concluded in 2007 that no one could be prosecuted at the federal level based on the evidence available, and the statute of limitations had long since ran out. Federal investigators once again spoke to Carolyn Bryant Donham to determine if she actually recanted her previous testimony in her interview. And if so, what other evidence she might be willing to provide that could shed light on her role in the killing or in identifying others who might be culpable. A recantation would directly contradict both her testimony at the state proceedings in 1955 and the statement she provided to the FBI during the previous investigation. Yet, when questioned directly, Donham adamantly denied to investigators that she had recanted her testimony, and other investigators ran into additional evidentiary problems. The most damning statements attributed to Donham were not recorded or transcribed, and authorities state that inconsistent statements on whether a recording had ever been made. Not only notes of the conversation were made, and that he could not provide a firm timeline of when this confession reportedly happened. It's nonsense. It's just a bunch of nonsense. So you've got, this an absolute lynching. Okay, a lynching. 60 years later, no one has been brought to justice for the murder of Emmett Till. But yet, for some reason, Jussie Smollett thought it'd be a good idea to stage a hate crime. Now, I want to read this memo here that the State Department actually released. This is the actual memo to close the Emmett Till case. This was a notice. File number 144-40-1660. Roy Bryant, deceased. John William Malam, deceased. Emmett Till, deceased. Date of incident, August 28th, 1955. Synopsis of the facts and reasons for closing. 1955, Emmett Till, a 14-year-old black youth visiting family in Mississippi, was murdered by white men. They took out some of these names, claimed that Till had propositioned her. Till, who is from Chicago, Illinois, visited relatives near Money, Mississippi during the summer of 1955. On August 24th of that year, he entered grocery and meat market and had an interaction with, we now know that was Carolyn Donham, Carolyn Bryant Donham. Accounts differ as to precisely what happened during that encounter. Black witnesses who had accompanied Till to the store reported both near the time of the incident and more recently that Till's behavior was limited to whistling as she left the store, okay? He could have been whistling at anything, and God only knows, did he even really whistle? I don't believe nothing that those people would have told authorities. I really don't. Not uh, anybody on the opposition, because they straight up lynched that young 14-year-old man. She even lied and said that Emmett Till was physically aggressive towards her. But here's what is clear: she didn't have any physical marks. She never was physically harmed, and that the white community violated Emmett Till and lynched him. Period. This was the Jim Crow South. Black men were forbidden from initiating interactions with white women. 4 days later, Till was forcibly abducted from his relative's home by at least two men. His brutally beaten body was found 3 days later in the Tallahatchie River. This is what's in the federal just or the I don't even like to say justice, but the Justice Department's memo, okay? Because their record on justice in regards to civil rights is very minimal at best. The FBI did not investigate Emmett Till's murder at that time. Mississippi state authorities, however, arrested two men, Roy Bryant and John William Milam. They were indicted for murder. They were tried by a local all white jury, which quickly acquitted them. And as you all know, if you are acquitted of a crime, you cannot stand trial for that same crime, as it's called basically double jeopardy. It's called double jeopardy. The only option at that point would have been to have tried him in some sort of federal court. And as you can see, 60 years later, the federal courts did absolutely nothing. They closed the investigation, even though they're clearly naming, we all know who's responsible for the murder of Emmett Till. They were never brought to justice. Okay, period. After the acquittal, these men actually admitted to a journalist that they murdered Emmett Till, partly because of his earlier actions towards Carolyn Bryant Donham. Roy Bryant and J.W. Malam are now currently deceased. This is why you see something like this, it becomes just an extremely egregious act because of the lies. It's just a smack in everybody's face. Again, I just think that Jussie just needs to go do his time, take care of his business, try to make things right. Because there comes a point when you try to argue something that everybody knows that you're guilty as hell doing. Um, it's becoming a circus. So unfortunate. Oh, hey guys, sorry I haven't even looked at the chat. Let me see who else in here. Hey, official truth seeker. Hey, Natalie. Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Centel. Love you, babe. I'm not sure what those initials mean. That somebody's spamming. Somebody spamming. Hey, Faith, how are you? Thanks for coming through. When Jussie Smollett came down, he was almost crushed. You know what I think is really unbecoming? What I don't like, I it almost feels like to me when I see these videos and I see this, this older lady here that he seems to be making this really big deal about standing there, getting her out of the car, walking with her, holding. It's like sympathy. I need sympathy. I need sympathy. Look, I'm with this older woman. I need to support or whatever the case is with this woman here. And I'm gonna tell you, it really pissed me off when I seen him try to do the black power fist. I'm like, really? Really? He did the black power fist. There are text messages, okay? There are text messages, Instagram messages, photos, video, all sorts of digital media that has come out that seems to show that Jesse had a relationship with one of these men, but yet he wants to act like he doesn't know. He wanted to act for the longest period of time. He wanted to act like he really didn't even know them at first. Remember that? Again, I'm glad he has a family that supports him. Seeing if I could find. There we go. I wanted to see if we could find, footage of him walking out. This person here is steady trying to get their face in the camera. Yeah, I cannot. I cannot. I just cannot. Okay. Ugh. I'm out of here, guys. Until next time.